The pregnancy test clattered into the marble sink, positive lines staring back like an accusation. Zara Okonkwo pressed her palms against the cool counter, her reflection fragmented in the gilded mirror of the penthouse bathroom. 28 years old, PhD in architectural restoration, and somehow she'd become a walking cliché. Pregnant by a man whose real name she didn't even know until 3 weeks ago. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd spent the last 6 months restoring the structural integrity of Manhattan's oldest buildings, yet couldn't recognize the foundation of lies her entire relationship was built on. Zara, his voice carried through the door, that smooth baritone that had first caught her attention at the Metropolitan Museum gala. "The car's ready. Your brother's expecting us in 20 minutes." She grabbed the test, shoving it deep into her purse. Tonight was supposed to be simple, dinner with Kofi to celebrate his gallery opening. Instead, she'd be sitting across from her overprotective brother while harboring 2 explosive secrets, the pregnancy and the truth about Matthias Crane. Or should she say Matthias Devereaux Harrington, sole surviving heir to the Harrington industrial empire, worth an estimated $47 billion, who'd spent the last decade pretending to be a bodyguard to his own adoptive brother. The bathroom door opened. Matthias filled the doorframe, 6'3" of controlled power, dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Dark hair, slightly too long, gray eyes that missed nothing, a scar through his left eyebrow that he'd claimed came from a skiing accident, but she now knew was from the car crash that killed his biological parents when he was 7. Everything was a lie, even his face. Well, not a lie exactly, but a mask. The careful neutrality he wore like armor, revealing nothing while observing everything. "You look pale," he said, stepping closer. His hand lifted toward her face, then dropped. The casual intimacy they'd built over 6 months had shattered the night she learned the truth. "Are you sick?" "I'm fine." The words came out sharp. She pushed past him, grabbing her clutch from the bedroom dresser. "Let's just go." "Zara," he caught her wrist, gentle but firm. "We need to talk about this, about us." "Us," she laughed, brittle and harsh. "There is no us, Matthias. There was never an us. There was you, pretending to be someone else, and me, the naive woman who fell for it." His jaw tightened, the only crack in his composure. "I never pretended about my feelings for you." "No, so when you approached me at the museum, when you asked about the Beaux Arts restoration I was consulting on, that was genuine, not part of your elaborate charade." She yanked her wrist free. "You were there to watch over Preston, your boss, the man everyone thinks is the Harrington heir. The man who has no idea his trusted bodyguard is actually the real thing, that his entire life is built on a legal fiction orchestrated by your grandfather. Preston is my brother, in every way that matters. Except the $47 billion way." Zara slung her purse over her shoulder, the weight of the pregnancy test inside suddenly enormous. "Except the way where he's living your life while you play bodyguard, all because your grandfather thought you were too damaged by your parents' death to handle the responsibility." Matthias's expression finally cracked, pain flashing across his features before the mask slammed back down. "Preston wanted the company. I didn't. My grandfather's arrangement let him have it. By lying to him, by lying to everyone." She moved toward the door, then stopped. Despite everything, the lies, the betrayal, the anger burning in her chest, part of her still wanted him to fight for her, to give her a reason to stay. "Were you ever going to tell me the truth?" The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. "I don't know," he finally admitted. "The longer I waited, the harder it became." At least that was honest. Zara nodded slowly, blinking back the sting in her eyes. "I need space. Tonight, just pretend we're still playing happy couple for Kofi's sake. After that, I need time to think." She walked out before he could respond, before the tears could fall, before she could tell him about the tiny cluster of cells currently dividing in her womb that complicated everything exponentially. The car ride to Brooklyn was suffocating. Matthias sat beside her in the back of the town car, driven by an actual bodyguard, Marcus, one of the few people who knew the truth, and the space between them felt like an ocean. His hand rested on the leather seat, inches from hers. She remembered when those fingers had mapped every curve of her body, when that mouth had whispered promises against her skin. How much of it had been real? Her phone buzzed. A text from Kofi, "Can't wait for you to meet Simone," finally bringing her around to meet the fam. Zara typed back a string of celebratory emojis, the performance of normalcy. Her brother had been alone too long after his divorce. If he'd found someone who made him happy, she wouldn't ruin his evening with her drama. "Your brother doesn't know about Preston," Matthias said quietly. "About my real identity." "No, I haven't told anyone." She kept her eyes on her phone. "Your secret's safe." "It's not about the secret, Zara. It's about keeping Preston safe." That made her look at him. Safe from what? His jaw worked for a moment. There are people who would challenge the inheritance if they knew the truth. Distant relatives, business rivals. My grandfather structured everything carefully. Preston was legally adopted before my parents died, making him the eldest son on paper. But if the truth came out, it could trigger years of litigation. Preston's worked hard to build his reputation, to prove he deserves to lead the company. I won't let that be destroyed. So you sacrifice your own identity instead, your own life. Despite her anger, sympathy crept in. Matthias, that's not protection, that's self-erasure. My life is fine. You pretend to be an employee of your own family's company. You live in the staff quarters of your brother's mansion. You had to ask permission to take me to dinner the first time because you were supposed to be on duty. Her voice rose. That's not fine. That's not even close to fine. I have freedom Preston doesn't. No board meetings, no media scrutiny, no expectations crushing down until you can't breathe. His hand curled into a fist. I've watched him shoulder that weight for 10 years. I won't add to it. The car pulled up outside Kofi's gallery in Williamsburg, the street alive with Brooklyn's Friday night energy. Through the windows, Zara could see her brother holding court, his lean frame animated as he gestured at one of his mixed media pieces. An elegant woman with cropped silver hair stood beside him, laughing at something he'd said. Simone, presumably. The first woman Kofi had introduced to anyone since the divorce 2 years ago. Zara took a breath, straightening her spine. Performance time. Matthias's hand caught hers as she reached for the door handle. His thumb brushed across her knuckles, achingly gentle. For what it's worth, meeting you was the first real thing I've done in years. That wasn't a lie. Her throat tightened. The pregnancy test in her purse felt radioactive. I want to believe that, she whispered. I really do. Then Marcus was opening the door, and they were stepping out into the cool October evening, and Zara was painting on a smile as Kofi spotted them through the window and waved enthusiastically. Inside the gallery, the air smelled of acrylic paint and expensive wine. Kofi's work covered the walls, powerful pieces exploring identity, displacement, the African diaspora experience. Her brother had talent that transcended his formal training, something raw and true that critics couldn't quite categorize but couldn't ignore either. Kofi pulled her into a hug, then stepped back to look at her. You look amazing. Doesn't she look amazing, Matthias? Beautiful as always, Matthias said smoothly, slipping into the role of devoted boyfriend with practiced ease. His hand settled on her lower back, possessive and warm. Her body betrayed her, leaning into his touch despite everything. And you remember Simone from the fundraiser last month? Kofi was already turning, pulling the silver-haired woman forward. Up close, she was older than Zara had initially thought, maybe late 40s, with sharp cheekbones and knowing eyes. Simone Devereaux, meet my sister Zara and her boyfriend Matthias. Crane, Zara supplied automatically. But Simone had gone very still, those knowing eyes fixed on Matthias with an intensity that made the hair on Zara's neck stand up. Not Crane, Simone said softly, her French accent suddenly pronounced. Devereaux Harrington, though you look so much like your mother, I'd have known you anywhere. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Hello, nephew, it's been a long time. The bottom dropped out of Zara's world. Matthias had frozen beside her, every muscle rigid. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled, but she could hear the threat underneath. I think you're mistaken. Am I? Simone tilted her head. I'm your Aunt Catherine's daughter, which makes us cousins, though I suppose the family never acknowledged my mother after she married a French commoner. Still, I've followed your story. The tragic orphan raised by his grandfather, hidden away while the adopted son takes the throne. Her smile sharpened. Tell me, does Preston know he's living your life? Or is that another family secret we're all supposed to pretend doesn't exist? The gallery suddenly felt too small, too hot. Zara's hand instinctively moved to her stomach before she caught herself. Around them, art collectors and critics mingled, oblivious to the bomb that had just detonated in their midst. Kofi looked between them, confusion creasing his forehead. What's going on? Simone, what are you talking about? Nothing, Matthias said, his voice like ice. Ms. Devereaux has mistaken me for someone else. Have I? Simone pulled out her phone, swiping through photos with deliberate slowness. Because I have pictures from your parents' funeral. You were 7 years old, standing between your grandfather Harold and your newly adopted brother Preston. The resemblance is unmistakable. She turned the screen toward them. Even in the poor quality of a decades-old photo captured on someone's camera, the little boy's face was clearly Matthias. Same gray eyes, same serious expression, already learning to hide behind a mask. Zara's mind raced. This woman wasn't just a random date Kofi had brought to his opening. This was calculated, planned. How long have you been seeing my brother? 3 months. Simone pocketed her phone, her expression almost apologetic. I'm sorry, Kofi, you're wonderful, truly, but I needed access to your sister and through her to Matthias. Access, Kofi's voice rose. Are you insane? What kind of person? The kind whose mother was cut off from a $1 billion trust fund for marrying for love, Simone said sharply. The kind who watched her mother die in a public hospital because the Harrington family wouldn't return her calls. The kind who spent 30 years researching, waiting for the right moment to claim what should have been hers. Matthias moved, subtle but threatening. If you're planning to blackmail me. Not blackmail, justice. Simone's eyes glittered. Your grandfather's will included provisions for all legitimate Harrington descendants. My mother qualified, but she was erased from the family tree, her inheritance absorbed into the estate. When she died, that inheritance should have passed to me. But I can't claim it without proof of lineage, and the family has spent decades burying any evidence of her existence. So you manipulated my brother to get to me. Zara's voice shook with fury. You made him care about you just to play some inheritance game. For the first time, Simone looked genuinely uncomfortable. I didn't expect to actually like him. That part complicated things. Get out, Kofi's voice was flat, devastated. Get out of my gallery, now. Not until I get what I came for. Simone turned back to Matthias. I need access to your grandfather's estate records, the original documents from before your parents died. They'll contain proof of my mother's legitimacy, her rightful place in the family. Those records are sealed, Matthias said. But you can unseal them. You're the real heir, after all. One word from you and the lawyers would have to comply. Simone stepped closer. I don't want to expose you, Matthias. I don't want to hurt Preston. I just want what my mother was owed. Help me get those records and I'll disappear. No one has to know the truth about who you really are. The gallery had grown quiet around them. People were starting to notice the tension, the raised voices. Zara could see collectors glancing over, whispering to each other. We need to take this somewhere private, she said quietly, before we create a scene that ends up on page 6. Matthias's jaw worked for a moment, then he nodded curtly. My apartment, 20 minutes. I'm coming too, Kofi said, if this involves my sister. No, Zara touched her brother's arm. I need you to stay here, salvage what you can of your opening. This is your night. Don't let her ruin it completely. Zay. Please, Kofi, I'll explain everything later. I promise. She pulled him into a hug, whispering against his ear. I'm okay. I'm safe with Matthias, whatever else he's lied about. When she pulled back, Kofi looked torn but finally nodded. Call me. Tonight I don't care how late. Outside, the October air had turned sharp, threatening rain. Marcus already had the car running. and Zara slid in, followed by Matthias and then Simone. The leather seats that had felt suffocating an hour ago now felt claustrophobic with three of them squeezed inside. "How did you find me?" Matthias asked as the car pulled into traffic. "I've been careful. No one outside a handful of people knows the truth." "Your mother had a friend, Margaret Chen. She was at the funeral, took that photo I showed you." Simone gazed out the window at the passing Brooklyn streetlights. "Before my mother died, she told me to find Margaret if I ever wanted answers. It took me 5 years to track her down. She's in a nursing home now, dementia setting in, but she had kept documents. Letters your mother wrote, photos, even the original birth certificates before the records were altered." Zara's head was spinning. "Altered? What do you mean?" "Harold Harrington had Preston's adoption backdated," Simone explained. "Made it look like Preston was adopted before Matthias was born, making Preston the legal eldest son. That way, even if someone contested the inheritance, Preston's claim would be ironclad. It was elegant, really. Brilliant legal maneuvering." "It was protection," Matthias said tightly. "My grandfather was trying to protect both of us. By denying you your birthright, by making you a ghost in your own family." Simone shook her head. "No, he was protecting his precious company, maintaining control from beyond the grave. He didn't trust you to lead because you were emotionally unstable after the crash. Never mind that you were 7 years old and had just watched your parents die." The words hit like physical blows. Zara watched Matthias's face, saw the careful mask beginning to crack. How long had he carried this? How long had he believed his own grandfather's judgment that he was somehow broken, damaged, unsuitable? "The records you want," Zara said to Simone. "If they prove your mother's legitimacy, what happens then?" "I file a claim against the estate. Not for everything. I'm not trying to destroy the company. Just my mother's original share. 20 million, give or take. Enough to honor her memory, to prove she mattered." Simone's voice softened. "Enough to fund the hospital wing I want to build in her name, so no one else dies because the Harringtons decided they weren't family anymore." The car pulled up outside Matthias's building. Not Preston's mansion in the Hamptons, but a modest brownstone in Greenwich Village that he'd bought under an alias years ago. His one space that was truly his own. Inside his apartment, Zara felt like she was seeing it with new eyes. The expensive but understated furniture, the books on architecture and philosophy, the single photograph on the mantel of 2 young boys, Matthias and Preston, maybe 8 and 9 years old. Arms around each other's shoulders, genuinely smiling. Brothers, not by blood but by choice, by love, by a decade of shared life. "If I give you those records," Matthias said slowly, "Preston will ask questions. The estate lawyers will have to inform him why the files were accessed. It could unravel everything." "Or," Simone said carefully, "you could tell him the truth yourself, before someone else does." "No," the word was absolute. "Preston doesn't need to know. He's happy, he's thriving. I won't take that from him." Zara had stayed quiet through all of this, but now she couldn't hold back. "You can't keep living like this, Matthias. Hiding who you are, denying your own existence. It's not sustainable. It's not healthy." "You don't understand." "I understand that you're so busy protecting everyone else that you've forgotten to protect yourself." Her voice cracked. "I understand that you've been lying for so long you don't even know who you are anymore without the lies." The pregnancy test felt like a lead weight in her purse. She'd been so angry at him for his deceptions, but looking at him now, seeing the pain he carried, the impossible choices he'd been making since childhood, she felt that anger shifting into something more complicated. He was still a liar, still the man who'd built their entire relationship on false pretenses. But he was also a victim, a boy who'd lost everything and spent his whole life trying to make sure his brother didn't feel that same loss. "There might be another way," she said quietly. Both Matthias and Simone turned to her. "What if we could get those records without officially requesting them, without triggering the alerts that would notify Preston?" Matthias frowned. "How?" "Your grandfather's estate. The physical estate, I mean. The house in Connecticut where he lived before he died." Zara's mind was already working through the problem like an architectural puzzle. "I've restored dozens of old family estates. They all have the same features: secret compartments, hidden safes, places where wealthy families stored documents they wanted to keep private. If your grandfather altered records, he would have kept the originals somewhere. Not with the lawyers, but somewhere he could access them. The house was sold after he died, Matthias said. Preston didn't want it, too many memories. Sold to whom? A tech CEO. Guy named Berkowitz. He's barely there, uses it maybe twice a year for parties. Simone was leaning forward, interested. So if we could get inside when he wasn't there. That's breaking and entering, Matthias said flatly. That's retrieving documents that belong to you, Zara countered. You're still a Harrington heir, even if no one knows it. Your grandfather's papers are your inheritance too. For a long moment, Matthias stared at her, something shifting behind his eyes. Why are you helping me, after everything I've done? Because I'm carrying your child, she thought. Because ready or not, our lives are tangled together now in a way that can't be undone. But what she said was, because despite all the lies, I still believe the person I fell in love with was real. And that person deserves better than to spend his life in the shadows. The air between them crackled with everything unsaid. Simone cleared her throat delicately. So, are we breaking into a mansion or not? Matthias ran a hand through his hair, and for the first time since they'd left the gallery, he smiled. A real smile, crooked and almost boyish. My girlfriend, ladies and gentlemen, suggesting we commit felonies before midnight on a Friday. Girlfriend. He'd said it without thinking, the word slipping out like muscle memory. Zara's hand drifted to her stomach again, to the secret growing there that would bind them together forever, whether they stayed together or not. Ex-girlfriend, she corrected softly, but she didn't move away when his hand found hers in the space between them. Outside, the first drops of rain began to fall against the windows, and somewhere in Connecticut, an old house kept its secrets. For now,